Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Niall, and I'm joining you here. It's really nice to be back in Dublin. I'm actually living over in Amsterdam, where our digital headquarters are. And I want to talk with you a little bit about how we think about sport, how we think about our consumers and experiences, and more importantly, how we actually try to figure out together how to bring those experiences to life at a global scale for all of the different consumers that we have around the world. And it's really nice to be back in Dublin. I actually grew up in Limerick, outside in the countryside, a small village called Patrick's Well. And it's really interesting, you know, when you think back to then and how I might have thought of standing here on a stage today, not only working for a brand like Adidas, but being able and to have the honor to represent a company like this is truly a privilege, because it really is a very special brand. For over 70 years, we've been known throughout the world and really loved for our impact on culture. We've been part of some very special moments in people's lives. We get to partner with amazing artists who really push us for what we can think about in terms of creativity, how we innovate, how we rethink our products and our experiences. But our heart is really in sport. It's where Adidas started in 1949, making running shoes and extending into football and all the other categories that we've developed over the years. And it really is not just the past or the present of our brand, but our future. We have to refine that DNA and make sure that we aren't just thought about in terms of style and our impact on culture, but how we can enable people to participate in sports. And this is the heart of our current strategy. So we're about 2 years into our 2025 growth strategy called Own the Game. And it really is about how do we bring the people who play sports, our consumers, to the heart of everything we do as a company. And this is an amazing change for a company of our size. You might take it for granted in your company, but traditionally Adidas, we've spent about 70 years making lots and lots of products in our factories around the world, putting them into big blue containers and shipping them off to Decathlon or JD Sports or Dick's in America. And now we have to think about how do we make sure that we're actually building relationships with people, because the heart of Own the Game is about orienting our company, retooling everything that we do to become a direct-to-consumer business. Because our shared purpose as a company is through sports, we have the power to change lives. And this is a really powerful statement. It might have seemed for many years like nothing more than a marketing slogan, and perhaps it was for a time. But now we're in a position to really do it, because we have the ability, through the power of digital, to build those relationships with each individual who buys our products, who plays sports with us, and who wants to be part of their betterment journey as they go from a beginner to an athlete. So how do we reorient ourselves to having that consumer at the heart of our work and our focus? But how do we rethink then what it means for the experiences that we create, and how do we regain that credibility as those authentic experts in sports that we have all throughout the company, and make sure we're bringing that knowledge and techniques to people through the products that we create, the actual shoes and hoodies and so forth, but also the products that we create that render as experiences. With the goal to really build about 500 million relationships in our membership programs. And right now we're about halfway there. We're already one of the biggest membership programs in the world, bigger than Netflix. But we can't stop there. We have to go forward, because Own the Game asks us to reach an 8 to 9 billion target of net sales. And this is quite a lot of money. But we have to make sure that we're really rethinking what we do. When I joined the company around 2016, the e-com was about a 700 million business. It's also a lot of money, but relatively very different in the scale of what Adidas is, with about a 60 billion market cap. But over the intervening years, we've scaled e-com to about 4 billion in 2020, and we've reached that saturation point where it's actually our biggest store. It's bigger than any of our key partners. It's in fact bigger than many of our competitors, and bigger than Puma or Lululemon. And many people might be thinking, okay, well great, we handled it. But we're still not satisfied, because we have to push forward, because we haven't put ourselves properly in that position to change lives through sports yet. We have to rethink what we're doing, and how do we really double down on building relationships and moving past a focus on just simply having transactions, just selling stuff, and making sure that we're thinking about lifetime value. So what got us here won't get us there. We have to move past a focus on transactions. And even a transaction at a point of a direct-to-consumer sale, the company traditionally, the transaction is finished 6 months earlier with sell-in to the wholesalers. So already it's a step forward to think about sell-in to the consumer, but now we have to think a step further and think, well, maybe we shouldn't just sell someone what they wanted. You know, maybe you came and you wanted some red running shoes, and we have a bunch of those. But we have to take that moment and say, well, is that actually what you need? And we have to make sure that we're focused on how do we inspire people to play sport. If you want to sell some running shoes, first you've got to get someone to want to go running. So let's focus on that and make sure it's actually the right sport for them. So if you think about how we've traditionally gone about this, and this might be familiar to you from some marketing campaigns in the past, marketing campaigns tend to have a structure, and they might often start with this tease phase, as it's known. We'll put something out there, a little bit limited in its information. Something's coming. It's too responsive for this world. There might be robots. And as a consumer, I think, okay, I'm interested. I like robots. What's it about? We go, we're going to space, mate. Boost out of this world. Look at those graphics. Awesome. Team spent ages coming up with that. It looks cool. And it is. It looks great. And you think, all right, you got me. What's it about? I like the graphics. You did a good job. Well done. I'm not sure if I want to go to space. I don't know if the knees are up to it. I said, no worries. We got you. They're going to be cool right here on Earth. Look at that beautiful photography. Mwah. All the lighting, positioning's perfect. You're going to be profiling away with your friends. It's awesome. And your consumer might be thinking, okay, it's okay, I did actually want the running shoes, but it's fine. But our marketing campaign is going to press ahead and say, no, hold up. Let us bring it home. Mic drop. Buy them. Buy now. What more do you want to know? Close it down. Fantastic. Let's give it up for marketing. Another award-winning campaign in the bag. But our poor consumer might be thinking, well, yeah, it's a nice campaign, but actually, I did want running shoes. This doesn't really look like running shoes. I think I'm just going to click on over to Brooks or on running, see what they got. By now, our market traders are getting a little anxious and sweaty, and they're like, hold up. We got other shoes. You want running shoes? Boom. We got loads of them. Which one do you want? And that one? That one? These are cool. Now, our poor consumer at this point is a little overwhelmed and confused. And you may have been in this position yourself. So we have to move past how we think about our products. And while it's great that our e-com has the potential to offer every single product that we range, about 15,000 or so, this doesn't really help any individual person to figure out what they even need. And so we have to move past our inside-out view of our products, of our marketing, of our operations. Because in the end, people don't behave like we want them to. They don't turn up on the site the exact day that campaign launched. They don't click through the exact right flow. They, in fact, start their journey a month or two earlier, trying to figure out, well, do I want to go running or not? And then they'll do some research. And they go through that whole journey with a different set of needs and goals than we might have. And in the end, those needs and goals will change as they go on their betterment journey from beginner to an expert or an athlete. Okay, there's just a bunch of boxes on the screen. Let me deconstruct this a little bit. So if you actually dive into this journey a little bit more clearly to understand what people do, usually if you take a sport like running, you're going to start at the very beginning, probably on your couch, or maybe in a bar with your mates, or walking down the park. And I'm thinking, oh, you're looking well. What are you doing? I say, oh, I'm going running. It's great. And you think, oh, I could do that. I will. And so you might do it right then. You're going to finish your pints. But maybe over the next day or two, you might start to notice more and more content that's inspiring you a little bit to move. And I think, yeah, I am possible. I can do this. So I'll reach into the back of the wardrobe. I'll take out those trainers that I had, gathering a little bit of dust, and I'll stick them on and walk out the door and start jogging. And you'll do that, and you'll feel great. And you'll do it for a couple of weeks, and get more and more into it, and you think, yeah, I'm running. And you start to notice a bit of a change in your body. You start to feel a little bit better in your heart. And you're thinking, yeah, this is going great. But then you're going to hit that wall. because you've been running in your superstores or whatever you had. And so you end up messing up your shins or your knees, but you don't know why. So you think, right, I better find out. And so people will then dive into a bit more research and figure out, okay, what do I actually need to know if I'm going to go running? What is the right gear for me? What are the techniques? And as you go further into this research, you might start to realize, okay, well, maybe I don't want to go running. Maybe that isn't right for me. Maybe I need to go and do a different sport. And so you might be exposed to some content that says, well, hey, you could go training. Training is a sport. And you think, yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's not going to hurt the knees as much. This works out. And then you might even be exposed to, for example, this cool post from Carly Kloss wearing this awesome outfit. And you think, yeah, geez, she looks amazing, and Carly's cool. And she is. I can be like her. Great. Sold. Bring me to that page. Let me buy that outfit. And where once upon a time we went and said, yeah, step right out over here. Now we have to take a step back and say, well, hold up. Carly's cool. The outfit's cool. But actually, you need to start over here. And particularly for women, in this example, you might see where you need to start is actually with the most complex article for training, a sports bra. Roughly 90% of women wear the wrong size sports bra, creating all sorts of pain and problems, which lead to them dropping out of participation. So how do we make sure that people are really starting with the right gear for them? And so we might even encourage them to go into stores, get fitted properly. Or if they aren't having access to a store nearby, how can we replicate that experience digitally? And make sure that you understand what you need to think about, how you can measure yourself, and ultimately start to refine through the range of bras, in this case, that we have, or tights, and get to a set that makes sense for the type of training that you want to do, high or low intensity or so on, and your own body shape. And so now that you have the right set of products, now you can start thinking, okay, which of these 3 or 4 actually relate to my goals and myself? So now I'm going to start consuming some of the information about the specifics of that product, its benefits, what exactly it was designed to do, what do other people say about it, is it actually good quality or not? And then how do we make sure that you get the exact right size for you? And we really spend a lot of time to make sure that that's correct. And then once you get to that particular point, now we can go back and say, great, now you've got the base. Now we can go back and see what's the outfit to go with that. And it's not Carly's one, but it's this other one, also really cool, and you're going to be all set for when you rock into the gym for the first time. Great. And so having done that for a little while, now we can start a conversation, having established a little bit of trust, to say, well, maybe we can start a relationship here. Why don't you join our membership program? And we can give you access to workouts, to our trainers, to ways to track your goals and progress. And as you go through that a little bit further, you might start thinking, okay, now great, I'm now starting to be a sports person. I want to give back a little bit. I want to be part of this community. And so you might join some of our global events, like Run for the Oceans, or even some local events, like our local communities and training and running and so on. And all the while, we can be thinking along and saying, okay, how are you progressing? Have you hit this milestone or that milestone? Okay, is the gear that you have still fit for that purpose, or do you need to go to that next level that's more appropriate for that type of working out? So great. So going from the marketing campaign to this sort of journey across an ecosystem and over time. And as you can imagine, all these examples are live. Unfortunately, I can't show you some of the fun stuff we're working on. And so you might think, well, we've solved it, right? Talk done. But as you know, these are often individual experiences, somewhat disconnected from each other in our own systems, and certainly disconnected from each consumer. So we have to think about, okay, how do we make all this stuff talk to each other, so that as someone comes to one touch point after another over time, they're getting that consistent dialogue and experience layering on top of itself. And so this means we need to rethink how we go about our business. How do we operate? How do we create content? How do we build our backends? How do we think about our supply chains? And having those conversations, sometimes it might start to feel a bit like this. And maybe everyone's good friends in your company. But sometimes it can feel a bit like this when you have brand thinking about one thing and they're working about 2 years out, and you have the markets trying to do something else and they're about 2 weeks out, and you have your distributions and logistics hubs worried about some other aspect. And so we're trying to get everybody organized to focus on what are these key opportunities that we have to work together to meet these needs at the right moment so that we deliver the exact right experience for her at that time that she needs it. So what we try to do at Adidas is we work around a framework to sort of organize ourselves and our thinking. What are we working on? What are all the different ideas? Where should that live relative to each other? And how do we make choices in priority where we invest and focus? And it's really about just looking at the different altitudes. Are you looking at a specific feature? Are you working on a general need and trying to understand that? Are you working on some macro trends and trying to figure out where we're going? And all the while asking yourselves, why are we doing what we're doing? And I would urge you, if you find yourself wondering this, please stop immediately with anything that you're working on and take that step back and say, wait, why are we doing this? And it doesn't have to be a good answer, but as long as you know, then you can make choices about the sort of effort you put in and who you need to collaborate with. And so this might be familiar to you as the opportunity trees from Teresa Torres that certainly heavily influenced our thinking here. But we use this as a framework across all of our work. And I'll show you in some examples in a moment, but what I want to kind of emphasize here, and it was touched on in talks earlier on, is that while this should be very heavily consumer-centric, it must be also accounting for the business goals, your feasibility at each level. And again, you might know it exactly, but you can at least have a hole to say, right, we need to find that out and design your experiments and workflows in order to get to those validations or insights that will give you more confidence to invest in each opportunity space or solution as relevant. So if we look at this a little bit more practically, you might see, going back to that example earlier, in that opportunity space of how you give someone confidence to decide. And one of those areas might be how do you evaluate a product. And of course, there's many, many ways you could do this. In this example, the way might be to provide relevant and consistent product information. Okay, great. Again, a whole bunch of ways you could do that. So let's name them. Let's have some workshops to figure out what we can do, what do we know. So you might think, all right, we can look at the product highlights. And you saw something like that in the example earlier with the little icons, right? That's a way we can try to give relevant information for that product type. But getting to this, and you start to see, this is really about breaking down the macro strategy, so from own the game level through to like an annual strategy, let's say, for our ecom, through to the strategy of that individual product topic, and sort of work together with all the different teams who can help you to understand each of that part better, and then match that with the other types of research you'll do, whether it's industry benchmarks and research to understand what's going on in the market so that you understand what consumers expect, or what they're used to, or our own research and insights from NPS or analytics, or qualitatively, obviously, from UX research, and you start to map it all together within the bones of that structure. So you can say, okay, how do we map from outcome level through to opportunity spaces and solutions, map to the KPIs that we're doing. So if we think, right, we want to provide consistent product highlights, and we're going to do it for this segment and this product type, I'm going to start with those markets. Okay, now we can start to understand what would be the appropriate amount of effort based on what we'd expect to happen to the business metrics on the back of that. Is there a different category we should focus on to have more impact with the same amount of work, and then duplicate that work across? And this example is very much based within a singular product team. Our teams are organized around topics, in this case, size and fit. But we also use it to organize the whole areas. So this is an example of a portfolio of the upper funnel of our ecom. And this is how do we group all of our activities and thinking within those fundamental journey moments, aligned to an understanding of what the consumer is trying to do, their goals. They're trying to find a relevant set of products. They're trying to understand and decide which one is right for them. And why are we trying to help them do that? Because we want to win the consumer goods industry and get to 8 to 9 billion net sales. But that's very big and abstract and far away. So we can think, right, if we would improve product discovery, for example, for a certain product type in a certain area, and if we would do that, we would expect someone to move in an easier way to the product detail page, for example. Okay, we can look at what are the KPIs for that and understand how they relate to each other. And more importantly, we can use this to align those discussions. So not just within the product environment, but where do we work together with the people who are creating the content, people who are creating the actual shoes and hoodies and other apparel. What is the work that we need from them, and where will that live within there? And what happens when we get other challenges, such as earlier in the year when our supply chain was disrupted, and we have to think about changing our approach to our business focus. But it can still all ladder into these moments, and we can think about what is the relevant type of information or ways that we can help to find a more available product, and where is the focus of that within these different journey moments, and who do we need to work with across the brand, across the markets, and across our own product teams and areas. So just to kind of summarize, in the end, what we're trying to do is to rethink our setup as a company. Because how we're set up now is not fit for purpose to get us to where we need to go, or by 25, or likely what comes after that. So how do we make sure that we're having a sharp focus on building those relationships in the right way with each consumers, and not to be too hung up on 500 million, but to think about the quality of those relationships and how they balance across the different categories and audiences that we're trying to connect with. How to make sure that they're meaningful. And we do that by creating this shared focus across our teams. So are we all trying to work together to those same ends? Do we know why we're doing what we're doing? How do we innovate? By learning from each other, by having the right blend of diverse perspectives, skills, and knowledge involved in each level of the work streams, not just within your kind of product triad of design, product, and tech, but also going across to the people creating the products in the first place, or the people who are ultimately responsible for trading. And what I want to leave you with is you might be sitting there thinking, right, that's all well and good for adidas. Big global company. We're across about 60 different markets, 60 billion market cap, 60,000 employees. We have armies to do this stuff, and we do. But it doesn't mean it gets done. We have to focus together, right? But whatever your company, you might be thinking, okay, that's not right for us. We need to do this other thing in our industry. But ultimately, it's not true. Like, each of you here are leaders within your team, and it's good to think about it like this. You sit at this nexus of the different areas of your organization, whether it's a similar setup of marketing and sales or business or something else, but inevitably the product teams are sitting in the middle because you're talking to all these people, trying to figure out where's our business going, what do our consumers need, what's possible in the short term and long term. So I'd urge you to just be bold in your thinking. How far can you take this idea? This is the perfect time to swing for the fences, now that we have to focus within the constraints. It's important to be brave, to be the one to ask why, and to say, well, let's hold up and get to a better solution. And be those advocates for change. Take that on your shoulders, because you can be the leaders who drive the business transformation in the right way to create these awesome experiences. And while there's always going to be doubters and haters across every company, ultimately, if you come with the right idea and an approach, and even better, a working proof of concept, it's very easy to change the conversation from why to why not. So yeah, that's basically all I want to talk about. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks very much, everybody.
We'll just keep you here for a second, and we'll just see if we have any questions from the audience. And if anyone is online, you can use the Slack channel to ask Niall a question as well. So is anyone there would like to ask Niall a question? So you have someone down here, so if you give us your name and your company and your question for Niall, that would be great.
Perfect. Let's get some water.
Hello. Thanks a lot for the presentation. I'm from AutoScout, so I'm in UX. So very happy to see the user journey as being part of the process, because that's what UX has been screaming for a long time. My question is more about how to bring this kind of thinking to very business marketing-driven organizations, sales-driven, in the sense of how did you organize the success metrics for this? Because I see a shift from revenue to LTV, lifetime value, which is super important. But I think, speaking from the last talk, business cases, like how did you bring forward this kind of change where everyone's thinking about the bottom line and as you mentioned, the stress of the revenue, but this is about the long-term thinking of what the value of each customer is for the business, as well as the value of adidas for each customer. So could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Okay, I'll try. I think, look, I think to be a change agent and frankly, to get anything done is really about credibility and your own credibility within the company. And to be honest with you, it's often very helpful to just get some points on the board. You know, maybe people have an immediate problem in your company and say, right, well, we can fix that. But we just don't put a huge amount of effort into it. And you buy back that time to focus on those bigger questions and say, okay, well, we fixed that part, but actually we've realized there's all this other part over here. And the most important thing is not to be pushing it in terms of, or at least try not to say, well, okay, we can make this awesome screen, everything's moving around, and so on. But to say, okay, well, look, if we do this, we would expect the consumers would then behave differently, like this. And we know that if they do that, that would lead to this type of business goal. And so that's what we're trying to do. So you connect a behavioral metric to your business metrics, and then connect to what you're overall trying to do. So in your example, and tying back to what I was talking about, if the focus has been on a certain type of metric, so for conversion, let's say in this case, we might think within a platform, or generally e-com conversion rates are about 1.5%, 2%, give or take. So okay, well, that leaves a lot of people, 98%, that maybe we could have a different type of goal for. Maybe we want to talk about engagement or acquisition. That seems to be somewhere on our strategy. Okay, maybe we need a different experience to ensure we're doing that and not trying to push everyone into this very narrow opportunity of conversion that we know is most likely not to happen. So I think it's important to always understand and be able to rationalize and communicate your work against how you would expect it to connect to the business metrics, and through that earn the credibility to bring the people on the other side of the table into understanding, okay, what would this mean for consumers? And then how do we talk to then the tech orgs or the content orgs that think about feasibility, what's possible in 6 weeks or 6 months or 36 months, and organize yourselves around that. Hope that answers your question.
We have another question over here just in the center.
Hi, this is Julia. It's really nice to see the framework of Teresa Torres, the opportunity mapping, and I know this framework quite well because I've been in charge of setting up a program in my company to spread the word around product discovery, and I found some difficulties with the adoption of these practices and especially of the mindset, especially because it's, my understanding, it's something that it's not only changing practices at a squad level, but also in the decision-making level, leadership, across all the organization. I'm curious to know how this has been adopted in Adidas, and if you have any tips or good practices to share.
Yeah, that's probably its own talk, but I think the trick is often to start small, right? So like we created this framework a couple of years back, and it rarely works in change management to say, right, everybody do this now. Because, well, you can imagine how that conversation is going to go. So what we want to do is have your early adopters, people who've been part of the process of creating it, and people who can already implement it, and then take the changes and successes that they have and use to advocate and show the others, hey, look what happens when you do it like this. Because you couldn't have teams who are very focused on almost like a project-oriented delivery focus. But if you show how it can change to drive a strategy by embracing the uncertainty that's inherent to any strategy, and say, it's okay if we don't know what this is going to be in 5 years' time. But if we know what we're striving for, the goal, and we have an idea of what success looks like, here's our plan to get there. And so here's a series of questions that we're going to work on, and objectives, and here's how we know if we'll continue or stop with each of these along the way. And we can do that at the smaller level of an individual team or an area or whole organizations, but it's fundamentally the same thing. Like, how do you know what you're doing and why, and what is your path to get the insights to go forward? And then really from leadership or from yourselves is about advocating what's happened. So how do I change the focus from putting all the bets on this solution, and we spend 3 or 6 months trying to figure it out and build it, to saying, well, actually, if we broke that up into 10 or 15 different parts, and we chipped away at each of those over the course of the quarter, you probably end up with a much more robust solution, something that's much more appropriate for the end users and, in fact, driving those business metrics. And you probably have a much better idea of why it's doing that, so you can inform the next set of solutions or opportunities that you work on. And again, it's just really about socializing that and bringing people into that way of thinking and working.
Anybody else?
Was there questions from the Slack or?
What's the Slack? Any call or any questions come in from the? Nope, we don't have one. Cool.
Okay. All right. Great.
Niall, appreciate
Well
it.
then,
Thank you
thanks,
very
everyone.
much.